Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Film Frauds, where myself, Matt, and my co-host Tyler
Hello.
provide completely unprofessional, 100% biased opinions on the movies of today, tomorrow, and yesteryear. But today, we are taking on the Decision to Leave, a movie that we're using to kickstart a mission goal for Film Frauds, which is to find the great film classics of the 2010s and 2020s. Tyler, would you care to explain more about this genius idea that you had?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, out of all of the ideas I have are amazing and perfect, and this one is included. So our whole goal, we're trying to sit down to think about like we could do like fun like episodes every 2 weeks where we kind of talk about like a certain like set of movies like we did for the underrated movies episode. And we were thinking about like how can we kind of have like a goal long term, and we're trying to figure out like what we know, what we think is we're kind of good at besides talking and being super charming and knowing everything about movies. Everything. Ask us any question, we'll know it. And we were thinking about like the movies we know best, and that's kind of like post 2010, because unlike probably some of a lot of other movie podcasts, we're definitely like bordering Gen Z, kind of that age.
Yeah.
And we know the movies. We've grown up with these. We've seen, Matt, you and I have seen maybe every single movie that came out in like 2016
Any
on
movie that was in the
repeat.
theater, we definitely saw.
We definitely saw it. And we were kind of like thinking about movies that would stand like the test of time, because it's pretty easy to go back now and watch movies from 1970s and 1970s, 1980s cinema and go, that's a classic. But I think it's really interesting to try to find out what has come out in the last, I'd say probably since like 2010, and what will stand the test of time and what will be remembered as a movie that we look back on as being influential, as being important, as being something that maybe changed the landscape. Because I think as Matt, you and I watch more movies that have come out from this year, they start to feel a lot more similar, mass
Yeah.
produced, and we want to kind of go back and find the ones that are impactful to us. We probably won't do very obvious ones. I feel like the most obvious one in terms of what popular movie culture is now is to just talk about like the Avengers movie and just be like, that changed it. But we want to talk about just stuff that means stuff to us, really.
Hmm. And so we're kicking off that episode with Decision to Leave, which is a movie by Park Chan-wook, South Korean film, and who is also the director of such movies as Old Boy, The Handmaiden, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Thirst. And he's actually a great director to start off the series with, because I do legitimately believe he's one of the most influential directors of our era, or like one of the best directors of this era, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. He's had really great movies. And so Decision to Leave is his most recent movie. It came out in 2022. And I would say probably Park Chan-wook might be my favorite currently working filmmaker. Um,
Really?
yeah, I'd say The
Okay.
Handmaiden was my favorite movie of the 2010s. And so I was really excited to watch this one when I watched it for the first time, because this is my second time watching it. So I watched it for the first time, I think at the end of 2022. And don't know what you think of the movie, Tyler, because this is your first time seeing it. So I guess to kick off, like, we're gonna start with our non-spoilery thoughts, both on the movie and just on our general thoughts on Park Chan-wook as well. So Tyler, what are your thoughts on Park Chan-wook first?
Yeah. So he's definitely been, I mean, he's a director that I've kind of, he has a weird relationship, because when we first started getting into movies, I feel like as many people do, you hear about Old Boy. And
Yeah,
you're like, "What's Old Boy? What's Old Boy?" It's a South Korean movie. You're like, "Oh, it's from early 2000s." You hear some kind of like whispers and rumors of it, and then you watch it, and you're like, "Holy crap! This is like an amazing movie. What is this?" Like, and it often serves as like, I think a lot of people's gateway into like foreign cinema, foreign movies.
yeah.
So I watched it when I was younger, and I was like, "That was amazing," and didn't really think much of it. And then when we first started our initial film frauds, your big thing was to try to push me to watch The Handmaiden, because you're like, I've seen this movie twice. You're like, I have to, we have to,
Now I've seen
maybe
it
you've
five times.
seen it 5 times. You're like, it's one of my favorite movies ever. You got to watch it, got to watch it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I didn't take recommendations. And I finally sat down and watched it, and I was like, holy shit, what is this? This is amazing. Like, this is genuinely stunning. So then as I do, I went through and I watched most of his movies. Rewatched Old Boy, Handmaiden, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Stoker,
Stoker.
Stroker. I haven't seen stuff like JSA, but I know you have, or I'm not a cyborg, I'm a cyborg. But I think he's stunning. Frankly, I think my favorite movie from him might be Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. I don't think it's his best, but in terms of his most enjoyable.
Mm.
I would definitely agree with you that his visual style, his flair, the way he kind of navigates, I'd say, gender and sex and violence as characters of themselves, and the fluidity of the camera and his cinematography, everything is top notch, and it really stands out from the rest. And I love watching his movies. I rewatched Sympathy for Lady Vengeance, and it's even better than I remembered. I love him. Yeah, he's. I don't know if he's one of my favorite filmmakers, but he definitely is up there, and I can see why you like him.
He has an interesting start. So his first movie was released when he was 27. That is The
Wow.
Moon Rises Over the Sun. And so he had two movies come out in the 90s that were financial bombs. So then he
Mm,
moved and went into being an art critic, and
mm,
then basically came back to films with Joint Security Air, which I rewatched this week for this episode. And when I was reading the Deadline interview with Park Chan-wook, which I sent to you about Decision to Leave, he basically said that that movie could have gotten him arrested at the time. Um, because of its political nature. So Joint Security Area, is like the tale of soldiers on the South Korean border and soldiers on the North Korean border forming a friendship
mm.
um, amid, like the political and wartime chaos of like their relationship that's been persistent for decades. So that movie could have gotten him arrested. He's also interesting in the fact that he did not graduate from film school.
Yeah.
So he's up there with like Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson, who are these great filmmakers who didn't need, or well, not didn't need, but like they didn't finish film school, but also they just use movies and watching movies to create their own artistic style. And he basically said in his interview that at the time growing up, like South Korean government was really strict about what movies he could get access to. And he basically said like he could only get access to South Korean films and like big budget American films, and
Yep.
none of them did anything to him to satisfy him in any way. Like he didn't find any sort of value in them, and basically had to watch movies illegally from Japan or like older American classics to form his own love for cinema and become the director that we know him as today. And just watching his movies, I do get the sense that like he is a man who you can see, you can feel like his struggle through his art. Like he's a man who clearly valued any opportunity he got to watch a movie from that he wasn't allowed to watch, basically, and then took inspiration from. Like he was a huge Bergman fan
Mm.
as well. Um, so I feel like that's pretty, like it feels like every scene has an interesting style to it because he knows, like with JSA, like JSA could have been his only shot to break through
Yeah.
as a filmmaker. And like watching that movie, both in its writing and what he's trying to accomplish there, and like and also with his filmmaking, like every movement feels like it has meaning behind it because he knows like this could be my only shot. Um,
How does JSA compare to? I mean, it's like thematically, because I mean, if you've seen a Park Chan Wook movie, you know it's heavy on sex and violence. I mean,
yeah.
even in the Deadline interview, he was worried with Decision to Leave that he's like, I don't know if it has enough sex and violence in it that my fans will be disappointed. How does it compare to kind of? Because he goes from like JSA to like I think Old Boy,
Yeah, I
or
think Old Boy
JSA
was next.
to it was Old Boy then Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. How is the comparison? Is there early Park Chan Wook in there? What'd you see?
Yeah,
'Cause
so
I haven't seen
JSA
it.
is very violent at times.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's also very tragic.
Mm.
So like it's not there's no sex in it, but it is violent. It's very heartfelt too. It's probably like it's kind of like a bromance in a way, which is something he doesn't really
Okay.
do in any of his other movies. It's an interesting one, and also just filled with social commentary that's not hitting you over the head, but like
Yeah.
focuses on the human side of it, kind of like The Handmaiden, I would say, like
Yeah.
where there's just a ton of social commentary about relationships between cultures, which we'll see in Decision to Leave. Cultures plays a huge role in that movie as well. And like when you look at his film catalog, he just seems like someone who never like rests on his laurels. Like you look at like JSA, Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance.
Mhm.
They all have like violence and to a degree like sex, but like what they're trying to do like thematically and like their plots are all to me at least different enough that it
Yeah.
feels like he's trying to like be inventive in every single movie that he's doing. He seems to like go back and forth between like bombastic and stripped down, bombastic and stripped down.
Mhm.
Which, not to spoil my thoughts on Decision to Leave, if you compare The Handmaiden to Decision to Leave, it's very stripped down by
Yeah.
comparison to The Handmaiden.
There is also one thing that I found really fascinating, kind of learning about him a little bit more, is he does the interview with The Big Picture, and he talks about the fact that he's a little disappointed that people only kind of hyper focus on the sex and violence in his movies and kind of don't focus as much on the
Mm,
romance, which was in turn a reason why Decision to Leave was created. Is he wanted to make a more romantic movie, which again we'll talk about more. But even thinking about that and kind of going back and reflecting on some of his movies, I can kind of see it. I mean, if you want to talk more like The Handmaiden, Handmaiden is a very romantic movie,
Yes.
but it's not necessarily the parts of the movie that you kind of that stick with you. We don't want to spoil too much of The Handmaiden, but there's definitely sequences in The Handmaiden that are more memorable for the violence or the like violent portrayal of sex than
Yes.
exactly romance. I mean, even Old Boy is a weird movie if you know the what happens in Old Boy, but it is kind of a romance. I mean, it's weird if you really think about it, but you could definitely kind of see the influence here in Decision to Leave, where the violence and sex was essentially very stripped down.
Yes.
But I also like I like when directors kind of like hyper focus on stuff like that because I think there's like sex and violence are so two like core things of cinema that kind of taking those very basic things and then putting them in different kind of unique presentations I think is always going to make them feel more unique and more visceral. And I just find
Mm.
myself like coming back to his movies and they are more impactful the longer I like the longer time goes away from having watched them. Is usually my experience with him.
Yes, I would agree. They're movies that linger with you for a long time. Because he's a filmmaker. I think he said in an interview where he said like when he says if you're making a movie, if you want a relaxing time, like take a bath, like take a
Yeah.
nice bath. If you're watching cinema, you need to like it needs to be an experience, which I agree, and I would carry that on into like reading and writing as well. Like if I'm reading a book, like
Mhm.
sometimes I like taking a break. I like reading like a dumber book, but like usually when I'm reading, like I want to get something out of it that's meaningful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to read like 30 Stephen King books or 30 Brandon Sanderson books that are just as disposable as the last one. Like I want to read like one Gaddis that like makes me question like my existence as a human being. And if I want to relax, I'll take a bath, I guess. And like I completely agree with what he says there. If you look at Tyler's Letterbox, you would know that he completely agrees as well. He
Yeah.
watches nothing but hard hitting,
Hard
just
hitting like Safe House.
auteur driven cinema.
I want to just throw this out there real quick. Let's just do a quick recap. I watched Night and Day, The Accountant, Ford v Ferrari, The Sum of All Fears, Safe House, The Kingsman, and Gladiator all in the span of about 5 days. I have issues. I completely understand. Matt, I do like the fact that you're like, I want my art with an asterisk to
Yes.
send me into an existential crisis that you have to take a bath. I feel like his
Yes.
movies would be good in a bath. Who knows?
No, I think Thirst would be good in the bath.
Thirst would be
Don't
good in the
ask
bath.
why.
Thirst is a weird movie. I think Thirst honestly is the one. I mean, we could talk about like his American movie Stoker more.
Mm.
It's a weird movie because he even said in an interview, he's like, I didn't write it technically, but I did a lot of edits on it. And you
Yes.
kind of feel it's kind of not up to his par at all of his
The
other
first
movies.
half I think is like really great, if I remember
I
correctly, because it's been a little while.
Yeah,
I
I don't
remember
remember
really
much.
liking the first half. Yeah, so I would say like with Park Chan Wook, his biggest issue I think is like his endings are either like just okay or they're just like phenomenal, like blow your socks off kind of
You
endings.
don't
Like
like his
Old
endings?
Boy,
Which endings
I
do you
think for
not
some of
like?
them,
Which
I'm
ones
not
do
crazy
not
with the thirst ending. I would
really?
say
Interesting. Okay.
I'm not crazy about Stoker's ending.
I
Stoker
don't
has
care
kind of
about
a
Stoker.
mediocre ending.
I don't know.
But then like Lady Vengeance has like one of the best final acts of any movie ever. And it's
Yep.
like again like a guy who in anyone else's hands like this movie would be exploitational and
Hmm.
awful, but like he's so good at when I was talking about Cold in July last time, like I say you can do whatever you want in a movie, but as long as you handle what is going on with the weight it deserves, then I'm all on board. And I think Park Chan Wook understands, even in his weaker movies, how to handle like bad situations with like narrative weight
Yep.
that makes them meaningful, like The Handmaiden. People get sexually abused by an octopus, but also it's handled in like a compelling way.
Yeah.
Whereas like if Eli Roth did the movie, it'd be a dumpster fire
You
probably.
don't like Eli Roth movies? You don't like Green Inferno and Hostel?
I haven't seen any of his movies. I can't even be bothered with watching it. Um, but
I've
does it
actually like I've seen
leave?
them. I've seen them. I've seen Eli Roth movies. They're not good. I'll stand. You know what? You're right on that one. You don't have to watch them. They're not that
All
good.
right. But Decision to Leave is an interesting movie in his catalog, so we can start talking about that.
Yeah. What
If
was
you are
your
ready to move on.
what kind of drew you to this movie? Like, what makes you? I know it's a Park Chan Wook movie, but what made you kind of initially be like, this is the night I'm going to sit down and watch this for the first time?
It's really just Park Chan Wook. As I said, The Handmaiden was my favorite movie of the 2010s. So like I just wanted to get to his next movie. Like that's
Yeah.
basically as simple as it was. It's like, you know, it's like you with the guy who did Black Hat. You're like, when's that guy? I just love movies where I can't see what's going on and at all, and people say I'm the ghost man, bitch, and like that's just what you
Speaking,
like. And
there's actually well, we'll talk about Black Cat more. Black Cat does have relevance in this podcast. I just want to throw that out there real quick. Just want to throw that out there. There's a reason why I rewatched it on
That is
Letterboxd.
bad relevance.
No, there's a reason why I rewatched it on Letterboxd, Matt. There's a reason. Just we'll sit with it.
With regards to Park Chan-wook?
Yeah, there's a reason why I watched Black Cat.
All right. Well,
there's a reason.
That's a hook for me to stay along with the podcast.
I know.
Okay.
So
then.
Well, Matt, I just want to throw out my experience with Decision to Leave, because I'm in LA. I'm in the hub of film in the world. And in November, I was like, oh, I really want to see Banshees of Inisherin. I want to see Martin McDonagh's new movie. Beautiful, great movie. Loved it. And I'm sitting there.
This is going.
And in the theater where I live, it's like an AMC, but they get smaller movies. And I was looking up the movies, and I was like, oh my God, they have Banshees of Inisherin. It's beautiful. I'm going to go see it. They also had Decision to Leave. And I was like, wow, I really want to watch that.
You can watch two great movies back
I can watch two great movies. But as I was looking through it, and I was like, I'm going to watch Black Adam instead of Decision. I'm going to do a Black Adam, Banshees of Inisherin, old school double feature. And then I went and saw Black Adam. Was like, movie's insulting to my existence. I hate it. I want to die. It was miserable. And then I watched Banshees of Inisherin, and I'm like, this is the most beautiful movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I haven't rewatched it. It might not be as beautiful. I may have to, what's it called? Have a chaser of Black Adam every time I watch Banshees of Inisherin.
I think stepping on dog poop would be beautiful after watching Black Adam.
Is a little bit, yeah. But I did not see Decision to Leave. I could not do the triple feature. I was a little burnt out from Black Adam. I'm not going to lie. Big mistake. Matt, do you like this movie? What do you think of this movie?
Yeah. So first, I just want to give like a little plot description before I give my general thoughts. But so the movie follows detective. I think it's Jang Hang. I'm probably not saying that right.
I'm not even gonna try.
And he is a detective in South Korea, who is given this case where a man falls from the top of a mountain and dies, and he's basically investigating as to whether or not it was a murder caused by the man's wife, who is CRA, who is a Chinese immigrant, and a potential romance buds between suspect and detective as the detective tries to figure out the case while also becoming obsessed with this Chinese immigrant woman, and shenanigans ensues, as you might expect from a Park Chan-wook movie. So my general thoughts on this movie, now that I've seen it twice, is that I liked it more on a rewatch. I think this movie is really, really good. I will admit, when I go to see a Park Chan-wook movie, I do expect some sleaze in it. Like I expect violence and sex, in pretty gratuitous amounts, but always handled in a very tasteful way. And this movie does not have that. In fact, Park Chan-wook says in his Deadline interview that he purposely did not include there's pretty much no sex in the movie, and there's very minimal violence, because he wanted people to focus on the more subtle features of the movie. Because this is at heart, it's a romance movie, semi-thriller, semi-psychological thriller, where you are trying to understand how these two characters feel about each other at different moments throughout the film, and as time progresses, how their relationship evolves. He wants you to focus on the subtleties in their face, and basically leaves it up to you to decide what happens in the movie. It's a lot like Burning in a way, where the movie basically lets you, the audience, decide, because the movie very much gives you very minimal information on what's actually going on. It's not an abstractly shot movie. It's shot like a normal film, but with regards to the actual relationships of the characters, there's very little of like, I'm feeling this right now. Well, I'm feeling this right now. You just have to figure that out on your own. So with that said, because Tyler, Burning is one of his favorite movies, I'm interested in seeing if you found that connection and what you thought of the movie overall.
Matt, this movie fucking rules.
Okay.
This movie's awesome.
All right.
I really like, nothing's going to compare to me to like The Handmaid or even like Lady Vengeance.
Okay.
But to put this as his, like, I might put this as my third favorite movie of his.
Wow.
I fucking really like this. And for me, it was a lot of, because I legitimately, I've seen the trailer once when I was watching like the movies in theaters. They played Decision to Leave trailer. I'm like, that looks awesome. Like it's a good trailer. It's effective. There's like fisheye lens in there. And you're like, this is Park Chan-wook. I'm so excited. But I knew nothing about that. And kind of like the first like 40 minutes of it, maybe a little bit less than that. I'm like, oh, it's a South Korean Basic Instinct. Michael Douglas, not Sharon Stone. I think it might be Sharon Stone. Where it's like a detective falls for a killer, and you're like, oh, it's like Basic Instinct. Like erotic thrillers, like they're not a ton of them. You're like, cool, like I'm invested in this. Uh, but what was really standing it out for me for the first 35 minutes when I was like, oh, it's just a South Korean Basic Instinct, which I was the directing. This is a stunningly made movie, like genuinely stunningly made. Park Chan Wook has always been a very talented director, but what I've loved is the progression of how his films look with technology. Um, his movies have aged beautifully. I think like old school mid 2000s, Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Sympathy for Lady Vengeance looks phenomenal, but it definitely has a like a mid 2000s kind of feel to it. And as he started kind of implementing more like digital filmmaking, post I'd say like Stoker with like The
Mm.
Handmaiden. I've seen clips from his TV show, Little Drummer Girl, and even with this, there is a crispness to the style of this film that I have not seen present in a lot of other movies. Maybe it's like, to me, this movie looks phenomenal with like fascinating directing choices, with a cinematography that like would audibly make me gasp, but also there are choices in the way he shoots this movie, whether it's characters seemingly breaking the fourth wall, looking at the camera, but they're actually looking at a phone screen through
Yeah.
the camera. The direction itself draws you into the relationship even outside of the actual characters. And when the movie eventually kind of progresses and we learn more about the characters, I found this to be like really romantic, like
Yeah.
truly like a beautiful, fascinating relationship, but also very funny. This is a very funny movie.
Okay. Yeah, it is
One
a
of
funny
the
movie.
one of the hardest I've laughed in a little bit is, this isn't a spoiler, is when the main girl, who play the actress Tong Wei, I believe, uh invites him over, and you just see from inside the camera he goes like, "Are you kidding me?" And he looks like a high school boy, and he
Yeah.
gets all shaved and he goes, and you're like, this is really comical. I found that I know that there isn't a lot of sex in the movie, and it's kind of a weird like sleaziness from Park Chan Wook that's almost missing, but that kind of makes the moments of intimacy more intimate, which
Mm.
for the story works. And man, the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm just kind of really digging it. I think it's a very, very fascinating movie. I don't know if it entirely sticks the landing. I know you're kind of talking about,
Okay.
I have some stuff about the ending. But there's definitely like 2 hours of this that I thought were just wonderful and a wonderful time. And it makes me so fucking mad I didn't see this in theaters. To see this in theaters on a big screen would have been amazing. But instead, I fucking went and watched Black Adam,
I
which,
know, like there are shots of like there are a couple of chase scenes in the movie like that take place like they're using drones to film like huge um like wide shots of South Korea as they run through. I couldn't imagine seeing that like in the on a big screen,
yeah,
but instead you watch Black Adam.
Black Adam. I watch Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Cyclone, Punch, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. in
Yes,
in Xandar, I think is the fictional city. I've seen that movie
mm,
twice now. I got some issues, Matt.
you do have issues.
I do. So, how do you kind of stack this one up to the other Park Chan Wook repertoire? I don't want to compare his other movies, but I do think when he's a director with such prevalent themes, that he has an idea and he tries to work it through each movie. Would you think? Has this stack up for the rest of you? For the
So
rest
I
of
would say that this movie is like middle tier for me for Park Chan-wook, which is still like really great, like
yeah,
relative to like other filmmakers. I would say I can pretty safely say that I've seen all these movies multiple times. That The Handmaiden is number one, Lady
yep.
Vengeance is number two, Old Boy three, JSA four, and then this movie five.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. Um, I'm with you in the fact that like I love the first like hour and 45, and I upon rewatch knowing more of like what to expect with the movie, like I was really into it. I was really focusing on the subtlety, the use of imagery because it really emphasizes the imagery of like mountains and ocean.
Mm,
Which in the movie they explain by Confucianism. Like in Confucianism, mountains attract people who are good, while oceans attract people who seek wisdom,
Mhm.
which I mean, like good and wise probably have different meanings than like our like Western understandings of them, but also at the same time, mountains represent like truth and seeking truth, while like oceans are obscurity. And if you and then in the Deadline interview, like he talks a lot about like the differences in our reality between like what is real and what is obscure, like what isn't mystery. Like Park Chan Wook was saying that specifically in the interviews, like that's what he was the point he was trying to make with the movie. Um, we're not going to go into spoilers yet, but I would say like there's a shift in the plot that takes a while to get used to, and I don't think it ever like truly builds up in a way that
Mhm.
it was designed to. Which I mean, Park Chan Wook again said that he wanted it to be like in his dreamlike state. Um, and even with that said, I feel like I understand what he's going for, but at the same time, I doesn't really find it to be particularly narratively satisfying.
Mm.
But like what you said with the romance between these two characters is very understated, but it's understated, but it's also genuine. Like I feel like when they're just walking through like some like old part of town, and like they're like there's like some like Korean culture stuff around that they're like old houses and stuff that they're messing around with, and it's like that stuff is funny.
Yeah.
And also there's like some scenes which I didn't really appreciate while watching, but I found out later on that so Sia Ray is Chinese, so she's learning Korean.
Yeah.
And so her Korean isn't as good as a native speaker. So she's reading old text. So when she speaks, like she's saying things like Park Chan Wook says, like she's saying things in Korean, like how like how like a non-native English speaker would
Yeah.
say things in English if they had only read Shakespeare. So there are
That's
times
yeah.
where he's laughing at her that are like kind of endearing, I thought. But like
That's
not like a
yeah.
making fun of her laugh, but like a playful kind of laugh.
I
And
was kind of combing through like receptions to this movie a little bit because I was curious. I watched it. I didn't really know what people thought, and I saw a lot of well, like native South Korean speakers who are just like, this is a wonderful like script that it's and it's that people who natively speak Korean will get a lot of the more like subtle elements of it, a lot of the subtle dialogue. And it's something that unfortunately for us is like lost in translation being English
yes.
speakers, that we can't get the full like irony and jokes and like subtleness of it. And that makes me kind of, I was like, like I was reading about that and being like, damn it. Like, I really wish I could experience that, but I'm glad you're not the only one who kind of knows that, because that's really interesting to think of what we missed.
And as for directing, like I think this is just it kind of reminds me of Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread, where it's like this director who's known for being kind of exploitational to a certain extent, makes like this very stripped down, just character focused film where it's all drama, it's all character building, character work. So it reminds me of that in a way. But there's also so many great directing choices. So for
Yep.
example, what I noticed in this rewatch was earlier on in the movie when the detective is first like investigating this woman, and it's sort of a mix between doing his duty as a detective and also but also like this like sort of romantic fascination as well. There's a shot where he's watching her through binoculars, but then it cuts to like a handheld shot inside her apartment to make it seem
Yep.
like he's walking in, but then it cuts back to him being with his binoculars.
Yeah.
It's just things like that that just like Park Chan Wook doesn't really draw attention to it. You have to acknowledge it yourself, and
Yeah.
but if you do pay attention, like it just rewards you with really attentive detail.
Yeah. No, this is exactly why we want to kind of like start a series like this, is for movies like this, is things that take like standard directing, where you could have like the typical Basic Instinct, he's outside and you get like this like he fantasize and you can kind of imply it, but taking it a step further, leading things, letting the audience kind of like trickle into the thoughts. It's one of the more like, there are some genuinely very immersive techniques that he uses, whether it's looking inside, looking outside from the phone, or having sequences where you're not entirely sure if he's there or not, and then it cuts away and you're like, that's really like fascinating filmmaking. Or it's the way that the cameras, like you said, have close-ups where it's like constantly in on the faces. Very early on in the movie, when he first takes in um the detective takes in the girl,
Mm.
uh and there he stares at her for like a solid 10 seconds, and it's 10 seconds of just silence in the movie as he just says nothing and just stares at her. And I went and replayed that scene a couple times watching it, and it's an immediate memorization, like it mesmerizes you
Mm.
into what you're basically seeing. And combining that with like a directing and camera movement, a fluidity that I haven't seen in a long time, as it kind of flows naturally throughout, as you get these different types of lenses and different placements of the camera. It's a beautifully directed movie, and I would argue it's his best directed movie. I think he's just
There's
improving his
also
director.
a scene earlier on, like the first interrogation scene,
Yep.
where like it cuts to a monitor of CRA,
And
while
they're
also
both,
he's in the shot. So it
yep.
looks like they're like looking at different ways. And again, like with the burning comparison, it's like you can interpret that in literally like 1,000 different ways. Like you
Yeah.
can interpret it any way you want. Like are they disconnected? Like who knows how to interpret that scene is.
Yeah.
And again, it's like it's that burning effect where it's like it's up to you to decide
Yeah.
what is going on here. But it's like it's such a simple idea, but just seeing it when her face is on the
Yeah.
monitor, it's so clever at the same time, and you're just like it's so thought provoking if you're engaged with the movie.
Yeah. I need to talk about spoilers with this movie. I need to, because there's some
Okay, we can go
stuff.
into spoilers.
Yeah, there's some stuff that I need to talk about that is but real quick before we go into spoilers, Matt, I wanted to ask you, how do you the person who plays Tang Wei, do you like her as an actress? Do you think she's a good actress?
You mean CRA?
Yeah, the person who plays the main love interest. Is she a good
Yes.
actress? Okay.
Yes.
You
Oh,
remember I
is she
said
the love interest of Chris Hemsworth in Black Hat?
there's a reason. So Matt, we have a very storied
Oh
relationship
no.
with Black Hat. I personally think it's a underrated hidden gem. I think it's a beautiful movie. Matt, you're like, the movie fucking sucks. The
Mark said
actress
there's zero redeemable qualities about
Mark,
the
our
movie.
friend, yes, in a maybe the most brutal thing that's ever been said to me my entire life.
Yes.
Mark said there's no redeemable things in this movie. In Black Hat, she is the love interest in Black Hat and in Decision to Leave, and I think that's wonderful, and that's why I rewatched Black Hat.
So she
I
has literally zero character in Black Hat, and like infinite. I would say she has infinite times the amount of character, but 0 times infinity is still 0. So that wouldn't really be accurate. Um,
God damn. No, I was like, who's in this movie? I was like, oh, is it any like South Korean actors that I know? And I clicked on the main actress and I saw Black Hat, and I was like, she's the person from Black Hat. And then I went and rewatched Black Hat.
how
That's why I
like
read.
did that change your like what was it like watching it with her in it, knowing that she's the Decision to Leave girl? Did you actually know her name this time? Like did you actually
Yes.
pick up on
Well,
character qualities?
it makes me a little more frustrated that she's an incredibly talented actress, but in Black Hat, she like reads her lines in English. And a lot of her like subtle acting is just lost as she reads English. Um, so I was a little, I
You
like.
can blame the script. You can don't blame her. Don't blame
I'm
her.
not. I'm gonna
Like,
blame.
just
I'm gonna,
skills.
because there's nothing wrong with the script. It's a beautiful script. You're just wrong. Yeah, I just had to throw that out there. That was my Black Hat connection. So on my letterbox, I just wrote "fuck you, Matt" in my reveal on Black Hat.
Was it worth it?
It was worth it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was over 2 hours. Yeah, it was worth it. Spoilers. We're just
Yes.
special spoilers for Decision to Leave. Spoilers, all of them, all the spoilers everywhere.
For every movie.
For every movie that's ever existed. Matt, for me, the thing that really kind of set this movie apart for me was I was like, oh, it's Basic Instinct. Like I'm curious to see how they can stretch this over 2 hours. And then you get, I imagine where you were talking about where they skip forward like 13 months. And then you get a kind of like a secondary, like, oh man, they're back together and she killed someone else. That's what sets the movie apart, where it became like a very romantic movie where they're so desperate for connections. Because you're just like, the movie portrays, it's so obvious she's the killer. Like there's no, like that's the movie specifically being like that. Like the evidence is so clear that when there's a time skip and the new detective, the detective's assistant is like reading out the like what happened to her new husband and how he died, and he's like, she was the only person there. It was a crime of passion. It was probably her. And you're like, yeah, that makes sense. All the evidence points to her. And then the movie kind of like plays with that a lot, at least in the first half. And what I found that really separated it was, you're like, oh, did she really love him? Did she really care about him? It's up to your interpretation. Second half cut, no, they truly loved each other. She loved him enough to kill someone else just to get his attention again. And I think that is so fascinating. I think that's a wonderful choice and really kind of, I think, pushes this movie into something special.
I would agree. Just like the way like the case was built up, I think is probably my only issue. Like it feels like a whole other movie that's kind of crunched down into just like a third act, I guess, to a certain extent. But I would say like the ending I found to be really powerful. With him searching the beach for her, as he digs the grave, and then it's the mountain that gets crushed by the ocean. The mountain of sand that gets crushed by the ocean, and like I would just say like that dreamlike state. I understand what he was going for, but at the same time, I do just say like I just wish it was built up a little bit more. The
Mm,
movie is
okay.
almost 2.5 hours long. Maybe they could have added 10 more minutes to the movie or something. I probably would have been down for it.
Yeah.
There's just parts of it that feel like a little disjointed. I do love how like some of the like when they're having their last phone call and it's basically he's like the moment you said I love you was when I knew I lost you. And he
Yeah.
goes, when did I say I love you? And then it's like he never said I love you, but he basically said I love you when he told her to throw away the phone, which is the
Yep.
evidence that was going to basically prove that she was going to murder her husband.
Yeah.
Um and so like with this movie, another thing I really appreciate about Park Chan Wook is what we said earlier about like his ability to use humor as well. So like
Hmm.
there's humor like all throughout the film, but like I think one of the scenes that really made me laugh was when like during that last act, like there's a completely random plot line where like they arrest the guy with like who has a bunch of snapping turtles in his car.
Yeah. He gets
Because like,
bit.
that's what
He's
his job
just
is now, and he
yeah.
gets bit, and he does like it just hard cuts to him screaming as the turtle is holding onto his finger, and like that's just like it's just like randomly thrown in there, but it's also hilarious, so you don't really
Yeah.
mind it.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on like the imagery of like the mountain and the ocean stuff? Did you find that to be compelling or?
I gotta be honest, it wasn't even like I was so hyper focused on the specific like directing choices. Like anytime
Yeah,
a camera like swung around or there's a different style lens or it was or in like you said, like the subtle humor that this is definitely a movie that will be valued on rewatch. It's kind of how I feel about most of his movies.
yeah,
Where you're just like, oh, this makes I enjoy this more in a rewatch, which frankly I think just speaks to the testament of a director. If if your movie demands, you can get something out of it and then get more on each subsequent viewing. So I have to be honest, I didn't like it. Just didn't catch my eye at first because I was focused on the 95 other things he was constantly
yeah.
doing in this movie.
What
Um,
do you think about like we're like going to the very end of the movie because that's what we were kind of talking about. Like, what do you think about like her dying at the end?
I mean, I understand why. I get it in terms of character motivation. I just think it's one of those choices. I mean, and ultimately this movie is a tragedy. That's the whole that's what it's the surprise lead up to is you have two characters who by the time they finally can recognize like the love for each other. Our main detective, his wife leaves him, suspects him of an affair. That was a really good scene where he's like, "Who's that?" He's like, "Oh, that's." His wife's like, "Oh, that's this guy." His wife divorced him a week ago, and it's like, "Oh, she's
Yeah,
having like and you're like, "Oh, that's a really like cool thing." And you're finally get that moment where like, "Oh my god, there's nothing like tying them. There's nothing holding them apart." And then she dies, and it's a tragedy. Specifically, the shots of like when he's literally walking over the part where she's buried under the
yes,
sand, and you're
yeah,
like, "Holy crap!" Uh, I don't know. I think there's like I think I was with you that there's a certain point where it's happening, and you're like, could have used like 10 more minutes of
yeah.
development.
So now that we're talking about, it, I'm kind of figuring it out. Like, I feel like there's like a narrative beat missing between like the phone call at the end where she killed herself and like the scenes prior to that. Like, it feels like
Yeah,
there's just something missing during that last investigation
yeah,
that I don't like. I never like completely bought. Like, it's very well, beautifully written and
yeah.
beautifully directed scene, but it didn't. To a certain extent, it doesn't feel earned to me. I feel like it needed just a little more narrative, like a
Yeah,
narrative chunk to it to like weigh it down.
Yeah, I think it was because this movie does a very good job of portraying it. The story is it's just about two desperate people, or two people secretly desperately seeking love and connection. Whether
Yeah,
it's through our main detective's like empty statistic based relationship, which I found to be very so. Our main detective is married and he
yeah,
has a seemingly like very perfect life. This is a big part of it. Is he's successful, he has a nice home, he has a nice wife, a seemingly loving relationship, but he has insomnia, he can't sleep. It's a big plague on him, and we kind of see parts of that lack of fulfillment with how his like wife will talk to him and talk about like statistics, oh, the number of relationships, and it makes you feel kind of very like there's a disconnect between them.
yeah.
It's less human but more like
Feels like
fact
she wants
based.
to improve she wants to improve the relationship, where he doesn't seem like he cares what
Yeah.
happens with the relationship. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, and he finds that founded. It's why he so heavily fixates to this one person, and the other person being the other main love interest. What's her name? The character's name? Song Ray.
Sierra.
Sia
Yeah, I
Sia
think.
Ray. Uh, where she is her husband, who we don't see much of their life, but beats her. And is
Yes.
also like you get this very like interesting couple shots when they find his body and they see that his name, his initials have been like embroidered into everything that he owns. And then you see the pictures of Seo Ray having beaten. You see a tattoo with like
Mm,
his initials on it, and it tells you everything that you need to know about the relationship right there.
yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, that's that. And it's just two people desperately trying to maintain some kind of relationship that they have. And I just feel like then at the end when she dies, I get the point. It gets supposed to be a tragedy, but I agree with you. It builds up to this desperate connection only for it to be taken away. I know it's the point of a tragedy, but there's something missing. There's like a 5-minute scene in between there that is gone that I think would have tied it together perfectly. And I don't know what it
Yes.
is.
I don't know either because again, it's in that dreamlike state, so it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what it needed. I'd also say like because going back to like, the whole Bernie comparison, I saw in a lot of interviews like people talking about the movie. They said
Mhm.
like the main detective is very mild mannered, and I got the opposite impression. Like I get the feeling that he like craves excitement and he's not getting it in his life.
Yeah.
Because like the first scene of him is he's suffering from insomnia and he almost wants to sleep at the wheel. But
Hmm.
and then like he's also when he goes drives to go see CRA, like he's driving, he's being very reckless.
Yeah.
I get the feeling like he's like work obsessed, and to a certain extent, he sees CRA as this ability to both combine his love for being a detective with like romantic love as well. So
Yeah.
like he could like as a way to combine the two, basically.
Well,
Um,
yeah, there's an implied when we have the time skip, there's an implied like impotence on him when they're
yes,
going where it's like, oh, you could take more testosterone. Like there's an implied that he's not sleeping, he's depressed, and he's not like physically or emotionally like tied to his wife anymore. There's like
and
I
part
don't
of
know if
that
yeah
relationship probably comes from the fact that like there's that little bit of like a little bit of doubt, like oh she might be the killer, and like
yeah
I'm romancing the killer. Like there's that need. It's not so like heavy handed as like an American detective movie where the detective is going too he's getting too deep. He's popping pills
you're
and
too deep, man. You're too deep.
talking to prostitutes or whatever. It's like no, he's just it's done in a more subtle way where it's like yeah, he's a little bit of a reckless driver. He is into this girl. He's putting himself in vulnerable situations with this woman who is a murderer and who he
Yep.
probably knows is a murderer. Um, and it's like that's what my impression I got from him. And again, like it's like the burning thing. It's like you can probably interpret it in different ways and be correct to a certain extent in any way you interpret it. But I do think like this movie probably represents some of Park Chan Wook's like best character work. It's just
Mm,
a shame, as we keep saying, like there's just some beat missing in the third act that doesn't
yeah.
quite tie the last scene together with everything else that's going on.
I do really like at least when we're talking about like the detective aspect of it, the fact that it's so obvious that she killed him that it's literally like he has to so basically like she cut he's like, oh, you probably did it, like there's a cut on her hand, there's evidence of abuse.
Yeah,
um but then she like comes to his house and like burns the pictures and
yeah.
starts like deleting evidence, and you're like, oh yeah, it's clear. But then it takes him to literally recreate the exact act in which she killed him, her husband, climbing up the mountain, seeing how many steps she climbed, and to for him to be like, oh wait, you really did it. And then he still kind of like delete the evidence. Like
And
he
even
ends up choosing
conversely, there's a scene where not to cut you off, but she's like
no.
there's a scene where he's texting her
Hmm.
and like she's sending like text after text after text while he's still trying to get one word, like basically one word together. And
Yep.
it's a way of saying like he's like 5 steps ahead of this guy
Yeah.
and he's just playing catch up basically. And I think the end of the movie is trying to portray the relationship as being more pure than it really is to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean the visuals do that. I mean, their first like physical, their first embrace is like romantic embraces. They're like on a snow-capped mountain with like
Yes.
it flutter. It's like it's
Where her
honestly
husband
like
was murdered.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I
we're
mean, close.
no
Oh
different
yeah, it's
place.
an
This is what
Ipo. Yeah, you're
this is
right.
an Ipo,
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
place. But it's framed and shot like it's the penultimate climax of the two characters coming together in a romance. This
Yes.
beautiful like they're pouring out their emotions and then they kiss and like join together, and then you're just like they did it. Like this is beautiful. And you even have the scene where he's looking over the edge and she like walks up behind him. And you're like, they're gonna push. Like, has it been leading up to
Yeah.
this? And she hugs him and embraces him. I mean, it's very like thinking about the movie now, the first 45 minutes until we get that a little bit of a time skip where like she doesn't love him, but then she realizes that he does love her with the telling to get rid of the phone, and then that's the second half of the movie. It's a story about someone chasing and then being chased, and then kind of coming together at that perfect moment, and then it all falls apart and someone dies. And it's a very, very fascinating example of like love loss and
Yeah.
like the desperate connections we seek for love. And I think that
I
is
want to rewatch it
phenomenal.
now that we're talking
Yeah,
about these
isn't it
better
like
theories.
isn't it
Yeah.
really interesting?
Yes.
I loved the main guy, by the way. His
Yeah.
portray the way he like conveys, like he uses his eyes to convey emotion and to just convey like bewilderment. There's just a
Yes.
lot about this.
Even like the eye drops are like a way like to see things more clearly, like
Yeah,
things like that. Like no, both actors I thought were just great at what
yeah.
they were doing.
I can definitely see some people. I remember I was kind of going through like combing through like reviews and stuff like that, and some people seem to be a little bit confused about the linear aspect of the movie, especially the first 45 minutes where you get kind of like cutbacks, and there's also like they're working a separate case. There's that like surprisingly well-made fight scene where he puts on a chainmail glove and like
Yes.
stops like a guy, and there's this big chase sequence, and you're like,
At
I was
night in South Korea, and like it's beautifully shot as well.
yeah, some people were a little confused about like the aspects and especially like putting him forward, but this is I think the benefit of a movie on rewatch is you can get stuff like this and stuff makes more sense and things kind of work together a little bit more. I
Mm.
outside of the ending, I think this is I really do genuinely think this is his best directed movie. It's not his best movie by any means. But in terms of like his progression, Park Chan-wook's progression as a filmmaker, um, it's a step above anything he's done. Uh,
But do you think it's a modern classic?
so that leads us to our next discussion. Well, I want to talk about one more thing
Okay.
before we kind of talk about that. How does this movie like hold up to you in terms of what has been released in the last few years? Because to me, I think this is a perfect representation of how things can stick out in the terms of like the types of movies that we've been getting recently in the past
I
couple
would
of
say it's
years.
more thought provoking than most movies I've seen in the past few years. Like it definitely takes its time. It's weird. It's like I just with movies that come out today, like even like Oscar bait movies, I just feel like everything's on like well worn ground, like well treaded ground at this
Mhm.
point. And it's like I remember like watching the 2020 and 2021 Oscar nominated movies, and I'm like, it was okay. Like I wasn't blown away by it. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times I was like that was boring, or I just feel like or it just was too safe or something. And I don't know, I think this movie is sort of returned to form of like actually thought provoking films
Yeah.
that are like well shot and that you can rewatch and get something out of again.
Yeah.
Um it's definitely a good like follow up. If someone who's just getting into Korean cinema after seeing Parasite, I think this movie is like a really great follow up to that. It's a movie that I think probably should have gotten more Oscar praise or Oscar attention than it should have, which is unfortunate.
This should have been
Um,
nominated for best directing and best
yes,
cinematography. I don't know if it was for best cinematography, but this movie is like stunningly well made.
and again,
Stunning.
like I think a lot of the acting, as you were saying, with the dialogue being as complex as it was, probably a lot of the acting went over our heads as well. And so who knows? Maybe these two actors probably gave the best performances of the year, and
Yeah.
we just wouldn't know.
No,
Um,
I definitely think like this is we're talking a lot about like South Korean movies from post Parasite Oscar win, where Parasite was probably the most popular South Korean movie that has like burgeoned. I know people who don't watch movies who have seen Parasite,
hmm,
which is I think at that point, I mean, it's hard for people who don't watch movies to watch like major contemporary releases in America, but to watch Parasite is they like it. It's a known, well received commodity across all boards of all facets of people who love film and love
yeah,
cinema, from casual watchers to people who really deeply kind of study them. And I think there's really something kind of fascinating about the exploration of like what post Parasite South Korean cinema looks like. Um, there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there, but when a South Korean film, we love South Korean films.
yeah.
We love them. When it really stands above the rest, it really stands above the rest. I don't know. I watch a lot more trash than you do, Matt. I watch a lot of bad movies. I watched Ghosted. It's
Yeah.
fucking awful. It's terrible. Um, but there is just something that's so refreshing about movies like these, and this is something that what we'll talk about is this can this be considered a modern classic in a few, but when I think about like contemporary releases and the ones that stand above the rest, this is one that's gonna like it's just something that's gonna be memorable from its unique presentation to the fact that it combines this digital sheen look that we've been adopting a little bit more, but utilizes color and framing and different types of lenses to create something that's visually very unique. And I
Yeah.
really dug it. I really, really dug it.
So I would say, if we were gonna like put this movie, if I was to make a gut decision as to whether or not this is like a modern classic, I'm sort of at the opinion that I would maybe say no right now.
I would too. I would because
Like again, like a
yeah,
modern classic has to be like just like profound, and I don't
yeah.
like. I think The Handmaiden is profound. I don't think this movie quite reaches that. I think it gets close, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe over time, as I get older, I'll appreciate more aspects of it. But at least like on 2 viewings now, I can say this movie is like a solid B plus that just does not quite reach like the modern. Like I don't think this movie is going to be considered to be a modern classic.
Yeah, and when we talk about modern classics, because it's something we're honestly figuring out ourselves. That's kind of the point of this. We're trying to figure out kind of like a framework of how is this going to age, and I think it's going to age phenomenally. But
Yes.
does it have the impact? Does it have the long lasting kind of like ramifications that we want? Is this a movie that in 20 to 30 years from now we're going to look back and be like, that's one of the great movies of this time period? And it's kind of getting harder and harder to differentiate between what those movies and like just try to figure out what they are. I think I like this movie more than you do.
Mm.
And I would probably not put it. I think it's a wonderful uh like exploration in its genre, but does it transcend past that? I don't think so.
No, not quite for me. Like I would say it's not like a Parasite level movie where I think that it could like grab people, not like a whole. It couldn't like Parasite like got like the attention of like the U.S. like period.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie, I don't think is quite. It's not that something has to be global in order to be good, but I think like again, as I said, there's some qualities to it that are too specific, I think, to South Korean
Mm.
culture that would ultimately hold it back from like being able to be truly understood, quite
Yeah.
like Parasite was.
Oh yeah, and I think if you're definitely looking for like an entry point into South Korean cinema, like you said, or even Park Chan Wook, this is probably a good one. Like this is probably the only Park Chan Wook movie you can watch with family. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, if
Dare
you're,
say you could probably get away with it. In this movie as well.
I mean, I guess you can technically get sympathy for Lady Vengeance. You guys are just gonna be a little upset
Yeah,
at some
you'll be a little
sequences.
down the dumps after.
Yeah, and it won't be the. It's not the best dinner conversation with mom.
No,
Post sympathy for Lady Vengeance.
yeah.
So Matt, would you recommend this movie? I think in the grand scheme of things,
I would recommend this movie.
same here.
Absolutely.
But it is not going to be part of our modern classics, and that's
No,
kind of
it
what
will
we're
not
seeking
be.
to find. That's the whole point of this is we watch
Yes.
movies that we think are really good and examine their directors. I do think that Park Chan Wook will probably get a movie in the our modern classics section at some point when we decide to do The Handmaiden,
The third
because
time.
for the third time, it might be a little bit longer than that before we finally get to it. But I do think Park Chan Wook. I just want to talk about him real quick, and then we can let all of you wonderful audience listeners go.
Yes.
I do think he is one of the best working directors today. I don't think he's my favorite, but I do think anytime he makes
He's
a
no
movie,
Yorgos Lanthimos.
no Yorgos Lanthimos, he's no Ruben Fleischer who made Rocket Man and Ghosted.
I never
Rocket
heard
Man's
of
a good
Rocket
movie.
Man.
You've seen Rocket Man.
Oh yeah, the Taron,
Taron Egerton, yeah, where that's a
Elton
good
John
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should watch.
that was a good movie.
You should watch Ghosted and be like, who the fuck made this movie?
Okay.
I do think he's going to be remembered as a director that has just made baller movies. Like
Yeah.
it's really hard to top like The Handmaiden. I mean, Decision to Leave's a great movie, but how do you compare that to like The Handmaiden or Old Boy or Lady Vengeance or
Yeah.
anything? He's kicked so much ass for 20 plus years now. I'm so excited to see his TV show, The Sympathizer.
Yes, I'm excited for that as well. And speaking of potential classic movies, next week, do you want to talk about what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, so
Well, I would say
we're
you. I don't mean like you. I mean like us.
us.
Like I
Yeah,
could say
yeah.
because you've been talking for a bit, so I can say what we're going to do next week or in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Well, me and if you're asking what I'm going to watch in the next couple of weeks, I'm probably going to watch
Every
Ghosted
Denzel
again.
Washington and Ryan Reynolds movie that came out between 2002 and 2009.
How'd you know? I actually. Oh, how'd you know? Yeah. When are we gonna do the next 2 weeks? What's
We're
coming in
gonna
2 weeks?
dive into James Bond movies. More specifically, we're going to discuss whether or not Timothy Dalton is the most underrated Bond to take on the helm of James Bond. In my opinion, I've only seen one of his movies, but he's basically is known as being the inspiration of Daniel Craig's Bond, being that grittier version of him. So I've only seen the Living Daylights, but I haven't seen License to Kill. So we're probably gonna watch both of those movies, and then maybe we'll watch some Daniel Craig movies as well, so we can compare and contrast the two grittier Bonds. So that's what we're
Absolutely.
looking forward to
Yeah,
next time.
we're doing Bond in the next 2 weeks because what do you think about the fact that it has been mildly reported that Aaron Taylor Johnson is in talks to be the next Bond?
That was gonna be Richard Madden.
I wish. Have you seen that fucking okay? Have you seen that
Citadel?
stupid fucking Citadel show?
I like it.
You watch it?
Yeah.
I watched 15 minutes of the first episode. I was like, this thing sucks. I turned it off. You like the Citadel?
Yeah. I watched 3 episodes. I think it's pretty good.
You know how much that show cost? It was like $300 million.
billions, right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's the second most expensive TV show of all time, behind Lord of the Rings TV show.
You didn't like it?
No, I turned off for
Oh.
15 minutes. I was very bored
Okay.
with it. You like the
I think
Citadel?
I think it's kind of goofy. And that's why I like it.
How's Richard Madden and how's our man?
He's good. I thought he was gonna be Bond. For a while.
He could
He's
be.
but
I want him to be.
now they're
So
looking at Aaron Taylor Johnson. Because I want a Bond movie with him, but like made by the guys who made Bodyguard. Like, wouldn't that be sick?
that would be sick. That would be awesome.
That'd be
Okay.
gritty James Bond.
Oh, Richard Madden. We want you
Yes.
to be in better movies,
Aaron Taylor
please.
Johnson's a pretty good choice, though. He's a good actor.
Apparently, we're gonna turn into every other movie podcast. You know, Craven the Hunter is rated R, and he apparently, yeah, the Sony apparently they released like
Is he Craven?
he's Craven. Have you
Hmm.
seen the dude is ripped? He's fucking jacked.
He was jacked in some other movie that I saw him in. He's been jacked for a while.
You ever see Bullet Train?
No,
Okay, you should not watch that. I think you'd hate
Okay.
it. I think you'd despise
I bet
it.
you love it.
It's fine. It's fine. It's entertaining. It's like one of those movies you can't take seriously. But it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so go check out Decision to Leave. Let us know. Matt, take it away. Send us home.
Bye.
You should definitely check us out on everywhere you can find podcasts.
Yeah, check us. I know what you meant. Yeah, check us out on our podcast on YouTube. Put our letterbox.
Bye.
Yeah, put our letterbox links so you can follow some letterbox.
Like you can like my fucking diatribes about Ghosted and every movie I watch where I write 17 paragraphs.
I was so confused. Like, Matt, send us off. Okay, see you later.
Okay, see you later. Fuck you. You can also check us out, Colors Wonderland, Matt's Bookshelf, where we're crushing it. Yeah.
I made a video on S. Scott Fitzgerald's best books. No one cared about it.
No, I cared about it. That was a good.
Really good.
That was a
Good
good video.
video.
I like that
Yeah.
one. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and you'll see us again soon. Bye.